Hello everyone, I welcome you all in the lecture series of Cognitive Ergonomics, lecture number 9, where we are going to discuss about human-computer interaction. Now let me start with this image where an space exploration today in the modern world is very important. We see a lot of automated system, we see a lot of computers, we see a lot of human beings interacting with the machine system to share the knowledge, to transmit the knowledge, to transmit the information, to transmit the data set from one end to the another end. All these things were not being possible in the period of 1970s. 1970, very limited people were handling a sophisticated system that is a computer. In the year 1980, when a sudden surge started to come forward with the usage of computers, very soon people started realizing that handling a large amount of data set, transferring the large amount of information, storing large amount of information require necessary skill in capabilities and abilities to interact with the system which we call it as computer. And then there was an arise of human computer interaction. 5 decades approximately have passed, and what we see is that trend has changed. We interact with computer at each and every step, we interact with computer each and every day. Computers provide an aid to us to execute the complicated tasks and provide a solution to a complex designs. Now this human computer interaction, when it started in the period of 1980, when the people from disciplines of cognitive psychology, people from artificial intelligence, people from computer science all together started to have a discussion and broader understanding how this computer can be beneficial. Then personal computing started to emerge out. Personal computing was also a major contributor in the discipline of human computer interaction. Each and everybody today is having a personal laptop, personal machine system where they interact. Each and every day we make PowerPoint. I am interacting with you with a PowerPoint. A software is required, a hardware is required for such interaction to make it successful and meaningful. Computers, as we were discussing in previous lecture about the human capabilities and skills, that the design principle should be aiding, should aid the memory, should aid the attention, should aid the perception, should aid the language, and vice versa. All these cognitive principles should aid a person to understand this thing. So these computer systems are providing an aid to human beings. Now in the modern design, in the modern technological world, we understand that these designs has to be around a human being, and that is why human centered approach is required. Human centered approach, if you see these in 3 different layers, for the easiness, there is a human which is interacting with the system, and this system is having 2 components. One can be seen component is the hardware machine, and to run the system softwares. In the human beings, different types of sensory systems are there. When we were talking about the sensation, perception, we addressed that there are 5 different senses. These are 5 different senses. Hardware can be a hardware system like keyboard, speakers, displays, and this hardware is interacting with the software, and collectively they together interact with human beings. In the software case, you can see different types of kernel spaces there, user spaces there. Now all these different complex system which is there, they together interact with each other and then provides an smooth interaction between the two. When any interference, when any blockage, when if in any case there is a failure at any step, then this interaction fails, which ultimately result into an error. Now how well they are synchronized together plays a crucial role. Personal computing encouraged the human computer interaction, and our reliance on these automated systems, our reliance on computer is making this interaction more and more robust at each and every day. Now what we see with this cartoon is that ergonomics for the adults and ergonomics for the kids are very different. They both are interacting with the system in their own way, in their own capacity. A professional might be dealing with the huge data set, sorting, categorizing, producing. However, for the kids, it may be simply a game. It may be a simple putting a post on the Facebook or on Twitter or on Instagram. For them, the ergonomics is not that much important, but for the professionals, it plays an important role. Definitely, there are many other parameters here which we are not going to address, like physical ergonomics, or psychological ergonomics, social ergonomics. Those parameters, those factors we are not going to address in this lecture, because our main concern is towards the cognitive ergonomics. So how the cognition, you can see there is a difference between the cognition of these two different class of individuals. The first question we should be asking to ourselves is that in this human computer interaction, when we are talking about the personal computing, whose personal computing we are talking about? Who is this person who is involved? In this human computer interaction, the human is the term which is being used for the user. The user can be of any gender, the user can be of any age, the user can have any background, he can be literate or illiterate. In the modern world, the human computer interaction is commonly seen, but in the period of 1970, it was very limited to only computer professionals. It was very limited to the computer analysts and experts. But as the surge of computers in the modern world started, people very soon realized that personal computing is important and everybody should have a computer. Definitely this resulted into different types of users. So there are different types of user in human computer interaction: novice user, naive, intermediate user, not less computing knowledge but not very high computing knowledge also, but having a computing knowledge more than the basic level, intermediate group, and then the experts. So who is the human? Human is the user. Different users, different type of user interaction. So when we are talking about the design, if you remember in the previous lecture we were talking about the mental model, where the designer has to match with the mental model of the user. So here the user, the design has to be around the user, and that is why most of these designs have to be human centric. The evolution of computing, as I was telling you earlier, started in the period of 1970s. Of course, the computing came in the year of 1940, when Alan Turing brought this machine system, and from there onwards lot of development has come forward in the area of computing. People were using huge spaces to store 1000 bit of data or 2000 bit of data or 1 bit of data. Huge machine rich systems were being used. There were personal computers when it started, personal computing. Everybody was having their own personal space, everybody was having their personal storage system. And then this evolution, this need for personal computing brought evolution in the discipline of computing. And today each one of us is having a computer. Not everybody, but still in a majority, roughly around 80 to 90% individuals are having computers. There was one data center in the period of 1980. One data center was there. Everybody was supposed to come to that central data center, acquire the data, and then they were accessing the data set from there only. Huge amount of data set, all the data set, anybody who is working on the data set, they were putting it at one central level. But as the computing evolved, as the human computer interaction came into existence, as people realized and noticed that there is a need for personal computing, all these things pushed the centralized system of computing into decentralized era, where all these data centers were being decentralized. They moved away from the center. There were different centers were present there. Definitely they were connected to each other. All these different silos were being connected together to make one big central network. However, they were same time independent from each other. And this moved into another domain of distributed era. Distributed era is there where everything was distributed, people were using their own set of data set and to work upon the artificial intelligence. In the modern world, the AI which exists is the low AI, weak AI, not a strong AI. But with the pace, the way the human computer interaction is increasing and is scaling up, the time is close when these artificial intelligence will be strong in their processing. Now, this human computer interaction has even moved to another level where augmented reality is being used to train the military officials, to train the army soldiers how to work in a dangerous terrain, how to work in a foreign land, foreign country, and how to respond. This is how the human computer interaction has moved to another level. Another is the augmented reality, where the doctors, the surgeons are using augmented reality to understand the nature of the lesion, to understand the nature of aneurysm and how to operate it, to which direction they can approach it. What is the depth of this lesion? What is the depth of its disease? How widely spread it is in the human brain? Now here we are just talking about the human brain, but the same augmented reality is being used by dentists to understand the functioning of the teeth, the liver, the kidney. In medical discipline, in medical domain, augmented reality is extensively being used. Due to ethics reason, some countries are using augmented reality to train their surgeons how to do an effective surgery using augmented reality. Virtual reality is at the boom. Lot of examples people are using from the discipline of augmented reality to handle complicated and complex cases. These are just two examples. Similarly, astronauts are being trained how well they can execute a task under microgravity or zero gravity in the space. Now, if we come to its definition of human computer interaction, then we see that it's a cross disciplinary domain, which is strongly associated with design of the information, design of the interaction, design of the communication and technology. How this communication is happening, how the information is there. To understand the interaction between the two, humans are having different capabilities and skills. On the other hand, computers are having different abilities and skills. They are two hands of the same body. How they are interacting, how the left hand and right hand are interacting. If we understand this coordination, then it will help us in understanding the use of human computer interaction in the domain of performance, efficiency and user satisfaction. Now, what you see is that what is wanted generally in the case of human computer interaction, what is wanted? I want to do an arithmetic problem, I want to create a data, I want to write a draft, I want to make a PowerPoint. What is required? What task is required? Why am I interacting with the machine? Why am I interacting now? To communicate with you all out there, how well I can interact, how easily I can interact, that has to be done and has to undergo several stages. The second stage is the analysis stage. Is the interaction effective, efficient? What kind of design is it? And then later on, once the analysis and design is done, then the prototype. So when a designer is designing something, when he is doing the analysis, he is trying to understand the mental model of its user, the needs of its user, the cognition of its user. Based on these understanding, he is designing something, and this design, he is creating a prototype. Once the prototype is done, ready, then they do the analysis of this. If it passes it, then the design is approved and it moves to the next level, implement it and deploy it in the market, send it to the market. Now it is foolproof. Now it is not going to fail, minimum error, but still the design fails. And then we again come back to its analysis, design, prototype, and again this chain of reaction goes on and on. So when we are interacting with the machine, and if there is a failure, there is an error, the error need to be addressed. Once these errors are being removed, then it moves towards the implementation. So like cognitive psychology or cognitive science, human computer interaction is also a multidisciplinary discipline. It involves cognitive engineering, it involves cognitive psychology, it involves cognitive science, it involves human factors. Because humans are involved, cognition is there, psychology is there, computers are there, computer science is there, ergonomics is there, and then how well they are interacting. Social science has to be addressed, ethnography has to be addressed. Different people, different community will have different approach to interact with the system. As we were discussing earlier that English is our second language. Somebody who is not accustomed with English or is not very good with second language, then he or she may fail to interact with the system. Like our parents, their first language is different, so their interaction with the computer will be very different. But the discipline of HCI is interdisciplinary, and there are several interactions are happening and number of probabilities are there for such interaction. It has to be human centered, because on one side the humans are there Cognitive interaction is there, means attention, perception, memory, all these things are there. Sensory systems are there. The sensory system is interacting with the hardware system, H and H, and that is why it is human centered. Human centered. Based on the user need, the hardwares are there. Somebody is blind, he relies on touch, hearing, auditory. Somebody who does not have ears but have a vision. So, the way they interact with the system will be different. So, their interaction design will vary in relation to the person's sensory system. Moving ahead, we can think of a software system. Different software platforms are there, hybrid cloud software native platforms, cloud based platform is there, and this is an interaction design, how they are interacting, and this is resulting into a natural language processing, machine learning, neural network, expert system, robotics. Machine learning is not very new to us. In order to understand human behavior, we run machine learning to come up with a computational model towards human behavior. To understand the consumer behavior, to understand the increase in sale, we do machine learning. We use this computational model to understand the human behavior. So, these things are not very new to us. In order to have an in-depth understanding about the human computer interaction, it is very important for us to put some time towards the human centered and interaction centered design, human centered or user centered. To have that understanding, we have to understand the design thinking. According to Brown, the design thinking is a human centered, creative, interactive, practical approaches there, so that we can come up with the best ideas and better solution, optimal solution. More innovative activities should be there. How effectively we can come up with these strategies, effective strategy which can bring organizational changes. And if you see, it is oriented towards the human. So, human centered approach is required. And who is the human here? Human is the user who is age independent, who is gender independent. 5 stages of design thinking: empathize, define, ideate, prototype, and then testing. We come up with novelty of the idea. How well are we able to understand the problem? How closely we understand the problem? Once we define the problem with clarity, then the idea generation is there. So, we ideate, we come up with several solutions. One of those solutions, the best solution, we opt and we create a prototype. But building a prototype does not mean the design is going to be a successful hit. Building a prototype does not mean that the design is the best design. So, what we do the testing of the prototype. If the prototype passes the test, then the design, we deploy it in the market. If it fails the test, then it goes back again to the stage of empathize, define, ideate, prototype again. And the cycle goes on and on and on. Who decides the idea is innovative? All the ideas are innovative, all the solutions are innovative. But finding the optimal idea, finding the optimal solution is an important element towards design thinking. The human computer interaction, when we are talking about the design thinking, if we take this example, the elderly aid instruments are there, a device connected to its ankle, to the wrist, to the ankle, to the heart, sending direct information to the cloud and also sending information at the time of emergency to the ambulance or to the primary caregivers or secondary caregivers. How? Through GPS, through the cell phone. These are motion detectors. If the elderly collapsed, suddenly fell on the ground, then these motion detectors sends a signal to the primary givers, secondary caregivers and the hospital. There is an SOS. Similarly, heart attack, it sends prior information to the doctors to get ready for a surgery. It could be minor, it could be severe, but at least the signal is being sent. This is human computer interaction. This is how the information has moved to next level with the interaction, how the information is being processed. And then several types of interventions are keep on evolving. This example what you are seeing, just recording the heart rate, respiratory rate, motion detections, there are much advanced tools are present there. The stick which elderly holds carries an information. The cap which elderly wears has a camera, so that any unpleasant event when it happens, then he can send a stress signal to the people who are more concerned about his safety. So when we are talking about the computer interface, software and hardware, software collectively together resulting into a computer system. Now when we talk about the hardware, it could be only desktop, CPU, keyboard, mouse. If they are non-functional, then you may not interact with the system. So first thing what we have to ensure is the hardware should be working very well and very fine. The power should be there, it should be indicating with the red light that it is on, it should be indicating with the yellow light that there is a system failure, or with the green light that system is running smoothly, as we learned previously about the perceptual principle. Different softwares are there, different softwares, Adobe Photoshop, Linux, Microsoft, Windows, Safari, Chrome, Spotify, GeoMusic, all these. One is the replacement of the other is replacement of the another, but they do serve the same purpose. The user of Macintosh will find difficulty to interact with Windows software. The user of Windows software will find it difficulty to interact with the Linux software. The user of Safari will find it easy to work with Macintosh, but find it difficulty to work with Google Chrome. Such interaction affects the performance, efficiency and user satisfaction, and the interaction between the hardware and software together collectively also affects the same way. So independently they are affecting the human performance, efficiency and user satisfaction, and dependently and collectively together also they are influencing it. They go hand in hand. Hardware and software you cannot just address separately. There are a number of challenges which user faces when he or she is interacting with the system. It has been noticed that user experience 46% time user face challenges to interact with the system. There are a lot of errors come forward. It may not be working smoothly, it is stopping, the windows are not minimizing. 46% time the user has bad experience with the system. Another challenge is the information technology is in one hand, another is the workers' productivity. Many a time people pay huge amount of time with this on the computer, but their productivity seems to be little less. They may be spending huge amount of time with the computer, but it does not mean that they are productive all the time. So, there is no direct relationship on workers' productivity with the time they spend on information technology. Even workers' productivity also does not rely on the information technology, which means computers cannot be the only an indicator that workers' productivity will be higher. Now, this could be because the different types of users which we discussed earlier. Some of our users may not have the skills to handle the sophisticated task with the computers, hence their productivity is being compromised. Most of the time, if you spend too much time with a computer, then confusion also arises. What kind of task is required? Do I have to save the file every now and then? Do I have to open the file and save the file with different name? Now, this is very common actually. The categorization, if we talk about the Apple in 1970s or 1980s, then lot of these folders were scattered over the screen. Today we have an ability to organize the folder, the information present in our laptop in a specific order, in a specific way. Each and every individual has a way to sort their data set, data files. Each and every individual has its own way to categorize and label the data set accordingly. That is why the labeling is also a part of human computer interaction. How the data set is being arranged. If the user faces challenges in the arranging the data set, then it brings confusion, it brings boredom, it brings frustration, it brings stress in them. They may not be able to understand what task they have to execute, what task they do not have to execute. Imagine an individual handling 1 billion data set from Aadhaar card. Organizing those data set, several parameters, several factors are required. Different state, different gender, different date of birth, different fingerprints, different iris information. It will bring a lot of confusion. And when confusion is there, when handling such huge data set is there, it definitely will involve frustration. Frustration will be there, stress will be there. The purpose of ergonomics or human factor designer is how easily and efficiently we can organize this data set. How can we bring safety? How can we enhance the safety of the product and the environment? That is the core feature of human factor designers, and that is the core feature of cognitive ergonomics is. How can we ease the workload? How can we enhance and efficiently enhance the productivity? How can we do that? How can we promote that? When less attentional processes is involved, when less perceptual processes is involved, when there is a memory aid, when the task we have to maximize the bottom up processing. In the case of this computer system, maximizing bottom up, where to start with, how to document the data set, how to categorize the data set. To conclude what we studied today, we understood that in the era of 1970, when the computing was limited to the professionals, limited to the programmers, limited to the computer analyst, very soon people realized that there is a need for personal computing. Personal computing started to decentralize the computing, decentralizing the data set. Personal computing even encouraged the surge of human computer interaction. It helped in the transition, it helped in the approaches, it helped in the transformation of the human computer interaction. Today in the modern world, when humans are interacting with system, it has moved to another level where we are using augmented reality, where we are using virtual reality for a number of tasks. Artificial intelligence is doing a lot of experimentation, research, where they are trying to understand how two systems are interacting, how the two mental models can be similar. How can we make these two mental models similar, machine and human? The human is our user. The user can be of three different types. How they are interacting with the system, how the user is approaching towards a system. Hence, the design has to be human centered. The design has to be interaction centered. Design thinking involving 5 different stages, talking about the memory principles. And finally, we started to address about the challenges which we are facing in human computer design, in coming up with different design interaction designs. What are the challenges which we are facing in the human computer interaction designs? With this, I would rest my case today. Thank you. See you in the next class.